What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Young Turks. I'm Anna Kasparian. Joining for the main show today is John Idarola, filling in for Cenk Uygur. What's up, John?
How's it going, Anna? Happy to be on the show.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here with you. I love doing the show with you, so I'm happy that you were
Same.
willing to fill in for Cenk. But we got a lot of news today. So we still haven't seen the final legislation coming from the Senate in regard to stimulus, but we do know some of the details, and they're not pretty. So we're going to get into a deep dive discussion about that. Later in the show, though, I'm going to go ahead and be shameless. I'm going to plug our post game because there are two stories that I absolutely love. One of them is about Britney Spears going in a Marxist direction. Okay, surprising. But is it really when you consider some of her song titles like "You Better Work"? And then she finishes off with a word and toxic. No, I'm just kidding about the titles. But no, she had some interesting things to say about the situation.
I'm a slave for the capitalist system. I think that was the title of one.
Exactly. And then probably my favorite story of the day is also in the post game. There are mayors in Italy who are calling out people who don't take the quarantine orders seriously. And it's incredible video. We have 3 different clips that I can't wait to show you guys. So if you want to be a member, you can become one by going to tyt.com/join. Not only do you get all that awesome exclusive content, you help support us, which we clearly desperately need right now. All right, tyt.com/join to become
clearly.
A member. Yes. Anyway, all right, without further ado, let's move on to some of the meat and potatoes in the news today. So the White House has allegedly reached a deal with the Senate lawmakers who are attempting to pass stimulus and relief for Americans and businesses in response to COVID-19. Now, anyone who was hoping that Democrats blocking the initial versions of that legislation would yield positive results was maybe a little too hopeful, maybe a little naive. There are some improvements, I want to be fair, but there are some significant issues with this legislation, which I want to get into. Now, before I get to all of the different provisions and who gets checks, I think it's important to draw attention to one of the biggest issues, and that has to do with the bailout money that would be given to these massive corporations, right? The bill certainly favors them, prioritizes them. And Zach Carter over at Huffington Post wrote an excellent piece that I highly recommend you guys read. So did David Dayen at the American Prospect. He wrote a comprehensive piece on this, but I'm going to give you a quick excerpt. We don't have a graphic for this, but I want to read it to you anyway. So Zach Carter wrote the following: final text of the bill has not been released, but according to a legislative draft, the new law would establish a $4.5 trillion, that's with a T, $trillion corporate bailout fund overseen by Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin with few substantive constraints. And the constraints are basically what Democrats had, blocked the legislation over in the past. And so now they're saying, no, we finally got some oversight. We'll get into what that oversight really is. It's actually incredibly weak. Carter continues to write, some outlets are reporting this as a $500 billion fund, but $425 billion of that can be leveraged 10 times over by the Federal Reserve, resulting in a multi-trillion-dollar program. So David Dayen really gets into the details of how this works. But as we know, just this week, the Federal Reserve reported that they're just going to continue financing the debt for all of these major corporations, and it's going to happen forever. Like there are no limits. There's no stopping it. So really, the corporations who stand to benefit the most from this stimulus bill are the ones who didn't really need this help to begin with, because they were already getting all sorts of financing and help with zero interest from the Federal Reserve. So now let me give you some more details on what's going on. The bill does accomplish some things, but here's what the Democrats are bragging about, okay? After complaints from Democrats, a $500 billion corporate bailout fund will now have far stricter oversight in the form of an inspector general and a 5-person panel appointed by Congress, lawmakers said. That's according to reporting from the New York Times. They also report that companies that accept money must also agree to halt any stock buybacks for the length of the government assistance plus an additional year. Again, this is reporting from the New York Times. Then you get into what this oversight really means. You read the draft legislation, and it shows that the oversight is actually incredibly weak. So the Senate, in a tweet by David Sirota, says the Senate includes a special section allowing Steve Mnuchin to waive the limits on stock buybacks and executive compensation. The only deterrent to him using the blanket waiver authority is that he would have to tell House and Senate lawmakers. LOL. Okay. And so what does the legislation actually say? I'm going to read from the draft. Okay. Word for word. If the secretary, meaning Steve Mnuchin, exercises a waiver under this clause, the secretary shall make himself available to testify before the Committee on Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs of the Senate and the Committee on Financial Services of the House of Representatives regarding the reasons for the waiver. And, you know, we've seen from the past, especially during the Trump administration, that those congressional hearings really do yield the results that we're looking for. Real oversight there. Yeah.
Yeah. You sounded worried at the beginning of this, Anna, and I can't understand any reason. I think, I don't want to, I'm not sure, but if there was anyone that I trusted less to hand out effectively in the end, literally trillions of dollars to any corporation that they want with almost no limitations and limitations that can be removed at the sole whim of one individual, if there's anyone that I would trust less than Donald Trump to do that, it might be Steve Mnuchin. Because Trump would be buffoonish, he'd be clownish about it, but he doesn't, like, Steve Mnuchin is far more tapped in. I would say that he is more expressly in DC specifically to defraud the government and to take this money.
You make such a great point, because as much of a ghoul Donald Trump is, you got to really look into the history of Steve Mnuchin's business practices. One West Bank, under his leadership, did commit fraud. They retroactively altered documents in an effort to foreclose on homes that they had no business foreclosing on. So Steve Mnuchin would be in charge of overseeing and you know, making sure corporations comply with the oversight, right? When he himself has engaged in criminal activity. But of course, he's part of the club. So now he is the Treasury Secretary. It's insane. So when it comes to small businesses, though, they need to abide by certain standards that massive corporations do not need to abide by. So small businesses that pledge to keep their workers would receive cash flow assistance structured as federally guaranteed loans. If the employer continued to pay its workers for the duration of the crisis, those loans would be forgiven, right? So when it comes to the massive corporations, this standard does not apply, whereas small businesses, in order to get these loans forgiven, would absolutely need to keep their employees. Otherwise, they would take out all this debt and they would be indebted.
Yeah, look, the specifics could modify how I feel about that last bit, but in general, I'm not against it. I think that restrictions like that should probably be placed upon the larger corporations as well, especially because there's virtually nothing stopping these companies from doing all sorts of, seemingly corrupt and unethical things with this money, other than potentially maybe not doing stock buybacks for some time. But they could use the money in a ton of different ways to enrich members of the board, and they could give away in dividends. They could save it to give away afterward. Executive compensation could and will balloon under this. All of these are guarantees. You can sign on that. That's a guarantee. I am curious though, based on what we've heard about the corporations, the $1,200 that I'm going to get theoretically, can I leverage that 10 times over? Or am I just stuck with the 1,200? Because I feel like I should be able to bet it somewhere.
No, we're going to get to what average Americans get, and that it's such a disgrace and it's so disgusting. Yeah. But let me just finish up. I want to agree with you, by the way. I think that there should be a standard for both massive corporations and small businesses to keep paying their employees in order to qualify for the assistance that the government is offering. But when it comes to corporations, like I said, they're held at a completely different standard. In fact, Zach Carter, in his writing, reported that the bill permits bailed out companies to lay off up to 10% of their workforce over the next 6 months with no restrictions after that. So it's like, okay, look, we're going to let you guys lay off 10% of your workforce over the next 6 months. But after those 6 months are over, have at it. You can lay off as many people as you want. You're still going to qualify for the bailouts that we're going to give
Yeah.
you. And by the
Yeah.
way, the bailed out companies could even pay dividends to their shareholders.
That would be irresponsible, though. So two things.
Amazing.
One, it's really weird that the Senate is like planning 6 months ahead for this disaster when it's all going to be wrapped up by Easter. Seems like a waste of time on their part. Why are they pretending this is still going to be around? But anyway, more so, like if this goes through the way that they're currently planning, and I know that Bernie Sanders is threatening to put a hold on it unless they don't change that, more than $4 trillion leveraged section of this. This is looking like we're being paid off $1,200 to look the other way while the single largest theft of government and taxpayer money for the benefit of corporations that has ever happened in our lifetime goes on. That will, look, if they leverage it to the maximum, it's bigger than the Trump tax cuts plus the 2008 bailout plus the George W. Bush tax cuts. Like it's all of that in one effectively lump sum that the most individually corrupt person in the country is going to have control over. And apparently he can't give it directly to Trump businesses, although he can probably just waive it and then testify before the Senate if he does that. But even if Trump doesn't personally benefit, he is going to be doling that out in the most corrupt possible imaginable way with almost no regulation, almost no oversight. And the little oversight that's there will be after the fact. A couple of CEOs will have to go testify before Congress. We know they won't end up in prison. We know we won't get any of that money back. It is an absolute disaster, an economic crisis that they are setting up in advance for if and when we get past the current crisis.
Absolutely. It really is. When you look at it on a granular level, it's so obvious that it robs the American worker and essentially takes resources that we desperately need right now to make ends meet, to feed our families, to feed ourselves, to make our mortgage payment, our rent payment, all of that. Takes all that money away and disproportionately provides it to the very people who already got all sorts of goodies from the federal government, especially under the Trump administration. I'm glad that you mentioned the $2 trillion in tax cuts, because I want to reference that in regard to the means testing that is applied when it comes to the checks that average Americans are going to get. So let's get to that right now, because, there's a lot of talk about, oh, we want to provide relief to Americans, but that relief will come in the form of one check. Okay. And that check is means tested, meaning that you're going to receive less or maybe even nothing, depending on where you are in the pay scale. And the New York Times even reported that lawmakers agreed to provide $1,200 in direct payments that would apply equally to workers with incomes up to $75,000 per year before phasing out and ending altogether for those earning more than $99,000. Okay, so families would receive an additional $500 per child. One of the concessions that Democrats received, which I'm glad that they did, but again, this doesn't go far enough, is in the Republican proposal, people who did not have an income, meaning people who made less than $2,500 a year, wouldn't qualify for anything. And so from what I'm seeing, it appears that now those individuals will also qualify for some form of relief. But the relief is not much. It's only $1,200. It's means tested. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because, look, the whole idea of means testing is, well, we don't want to provide government money to people who don't need it. And so, by the way, they're going to base this on your tax return. If you filed this year, last year, meaning in 2019, then they'll rely on that. If you haven't filed for 2019, but did in 2018, they'll rely on that. So that's the income that they're basing this on. But here's the thing. Okay, so did they do any type of analysis when it comes to corporations and whether or not they need it? Like, did they means test when it came to the bailouts? Because they just got a $2 trillion tax cut. So what the hell?
Yeah, so there's means testing that we're focusing on a lot. Well, let's talk a little bit about needs testing. One corporation that has requested $60 billion is Boeing. They need $60 billion, which means, they must be in an emergency to need that much. That's more than 10% of the total amount of money that was originally set aside for all these corporations. So they must desperately need it. And then someone raised the possibility that in exchange for a massive, unprecedented bailout of an individual corporation, that hypothetically the government, like any investor, should get a stake in the company that they've saved. And the Boeing CEO said, yeah, no, maybe we won't take the money at all. Maybe we won't take the bailout if you demand that you have to have a stake. Well, then I would say, I don't think you need those $60 billion if you can just choose not to participate in exchange for a stake in the business. The business would continue. The business, you're saying, will fail without that money. You're now saying, well, if you want to be part owners, then I guess we'll just go our own way. You definitely don't need that money. But they are, as you point out, they're putting a higher standard of scrutiny on some individual who works at Subway than someone who literally owns Subways in this case, or planes. But you get what I'm saying.
Definitely. And the problem with means testing is, first of all, you don't know what any individual situation is. So if someone, let's say, filed taxes in 2018 and they were doing really well financially that year, what if they lost their job and in 2019 they had like no income? Right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't know. And by the way, this is impacting everybody, every American worker. So you might be, maybe you're not in management, you're not an executive, you're just a worker at a company and you're well compensated. You've been there for a long time. This is affecting you. It's affecting your income. So I don't think means testing makes sense. And it also needlessly makes it makes the checks, like it delays the checks. And so how are people going to get the checks, by the way? This is what blew my mind as well. If you provided the IRS direct deposit information, so it automatically deposits your refund or whatever it is, then you'll get the money sooner. However, if you have not, there are reports indicating that it'll take as long as 4 months for you to receive the help, the crumbs that Congress is going to provide you.
4 months?
4 months.
If you desperately need $1,200, you need it sooner than 4 months from now. I'm gonna say for most people.
Yeah, this is what we're dealing with. Bailing out corporations.
I'm sure Boeing will wait a third of a year.
And it's incredible how we're rewarding a company that cut corners to increase profits on a plane that ended up killing a lot of people.
Yeah.
Does that matter at all or no?
You'd think. While instead they were using the money that they had, instead of buying new planes, upgrading their fleet, doing this sort of testing and maintenance, instead they were buying up all their own stock to artificially increase the price of it. Don't you think it's weird that in all of this, like there's people arguing about what the numbers for individual things should be, but there's like no talk of rolling back the massive tax cuts for the 1%? Like I understand, okay, they're not gonna abide a conversation about raising corporate taxes right now, although I think there's a case to be made. But certainly for individuals, people who are going to weather this storm perfectly fine from an economic point of view, they clearly could contribute to this national emergency that's been declared. But no one's even talking about it. They're talking about means testing, middle class people, working class people potentially, but they're not interested in potentially raising taxes. They're not even talking about it.
Yeah, this legislation really does epitomize the idea that we do have socialism in the country for the rich, and they're basically being taken care of by us, by the average American worker. And even though we're paying our taxes, we're doing everything we can. We're following everything that we're supposed to follow. We're hard workers. We do our best. And the fact that they're just giving us a tiny amount of money to just keep us complacent long enough. I think they're worried about an uprising, and they should be worried about it. But we shouldn't be complacent with a tiny amount of money, like a one-time check, when there's really no end in sight right now when it comes to the coronavirus. We have this incompetent president who wants to get us back to work before Easter Sunday. That is going to drag this whole situation out longer. I don't think it's going to improve the economy when you have a workforce that's getting sick and dying because the wealthy want you to get back to work to improve their stock portfolios, right? So it's just so counterproductive in so many different ways. But I do want to be fair, and I want to just mention one final component of this where I do think there was an improvement, and I do want to give Democrats, I guess, a tiny bit of credit because this was where I saw some significant change. So when it came to unemployment insurance, it's a lot more robust than what was originally proposed. So the bill would offer jobless Americans $600 a week and pay 13 weeks, it should be more, 13 weeks of unemployment benefits, okay? The expanded unemployment insurance includes self-employed workers. So that's really good for people who are part of the gig economy. There was a lot of concern that they wouldn't be included in this. Those seeking part-time work, workers who quit their job or can't reach their place of work as a result of COVID-19, or don't have sufficient work history to otherwise qualify for benefits. So Democrats said that they really wanted to strengthen that portion of the legislation, and it appears that they have. But it does not offset the damage that's going to be done as a result of those, multi-trillion-dollar bailouts for corporations.
Agreed.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit about some of those goons who do want everyone to go back to work, knowing full well that you'd risk your life doing that. And then later in the show, we'll discuss where Trump is with his Easter goal disaster.
Many of you already know that the TYT Army has been officially organizing for the past year, and the Army is constantly growing, too strong. They're making decisions on which candidates and elected officials to help, and always coming up with ways to inform people about progressive policies. I love that. Now, we want to give a huge shout out to some special volunteers and highlight accomplishments of our TYT Army. You're making all the difference. Carlos Ramirez III is the colonel or the department director of Task Force 1, which is a team that keeps a lookout for biased stories reported in the media. They then vet stories before they send them to the next team for fact checking. I love these guys. This is Carlos's first time volunteering in politics, but he rose to the ranks thanks to his experience as a software developer and his commitment to objective reporting to help build his team. With training and support from General Alison Hartson, of course our TYT community director, Carlos is learning how to organize, strategize, and make a real difference. Now here's what Allison says. You would never know that this is Carlos's first experience with politics. His ability to inspire and support his team, collaborate with other team leads, and use his skills at data and software to help us grow has surprised probably both of us. I can't imagine where we would be without him. All right, thank you, Carlos, for helping lead our TYT Army. You're awesome. To learn more about the TYT Army and how you can help from home or even start your own team, head to tyt.com/army. And PS, check your spam folder for lost emails to stay up to date with our events.
Did I think I would like to see a dictator? But if there's going to be one, I want it to be Trump.
Tick-tock, tick-tock.
Where's the line? We've crossed every line you can imagine.
We are a socialist country. It's socialism for the rich.
Tick-tock, tick-tock.
You don't have to know the truth, just believe what they tell you.
There is no bounds to their monstrous hypocrisy. Tick-tock. I think we're going to win the Senate in 2020. And I think we're going to have the House, and I think we're going to have the presidency. Tick-tock. And in 2020, we're going to clean your clock. And we're going to run you out of town, and we're going to have an actual democracy in this country. November of 2020 could also be potentially the greatest day of our lives. Let us whisper of a dream.
With Doe, you can turn your passions into potential investment opportunities. Whether it's cannabis, fashion, travel, video games, or anything in between, you tell them what you're interested in, and they'll help you uncover the investment potential. Doe provides your daily one-stop investment shop with lists of companies that relate to your personal interests, relevant news, and your favorite stocks and videos that unpack today's money-moving headlines in under 3 minutes. Go to doe.com/TYT.
Today, a terrible day for the internet, a terrible day for America. The internet as we know it is not going to exist anymore.
A real dark day for information, and yet another way that they're bleeding out the democracy.
We're now going to have these gatekeepers of information deciding what we can and can't see, and that's what scares me the most.
Whether you're conservative or progressive or anywhere in the middle, this is the one thing we should all agree to. Protect the internet, because the establishment is coming for it. Don't let them destroy the internet.
Hey everyone, welcome back to TYT. Anna Kasparian and John Idarola with you. For those of you watching, maybe you just tuned in and you're wondering what our programming schedule is considering COVID-19. Just to reiterate, we are doing a live show Monday through Friday at 3 p.m. Pacific time, 6 p.m. Eastern. We have to cut down to 1 hour, but we're doing live videos throughout the day. I know John does live videos. Cenk did like 3 last night. I did 1 today. So make sure you check us out on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/theyoungturks. That's where you can find all of our new content. And if you are able to, I know it's a difficult time for everyone, a good way to support the show is to either become a member by going to tyt.com/join or by donating to our fundraiser. We're trying to keep TYT sustainable, and you can do that by going to tyt.com/go. All right, well, let's move on to our next story. You ready, John?
I am.
All right, let's do it. Donald Trump has faced some backlash following a statement he made during a Fox News town hall. Now, it had to do with COVID-19 and how he would provide aid to various states. And apparently, when he made it abundantly clear that he was willing to provide aid to governors who were nice to him, people didn't like it. And so he's now trying to defend himself. And before I give you his defense, I just want you to hear exactly what he had to say word for word. And then I'll tell you how he's trying to, clean up his mess.
Governor Newsom and I have been getting along really great. We're sending the ship, the great hospital ship, as you know. And we are doing very well with, I think, almost all of the governors. For the most part, I think we're doing very well. But, it's a two-way street. They have to treat us well also. They can't say, oh, gee, we should get this, we should get that. We're doing a great job, like in New York, where we're building, as I said, 4 hospitals, 4 we're literally building hospitals and medical centers. And then I hear that, there's a problem with ventilators. Well, we sent them ventilators, and they could have had 15 or 16,000. All they had to do is order them 2 years ago, but they decided not to do it. They can't blame us for that.
Oh my God.
So he's implying, like, look, it's a two-way street. If you want help, you got to be nice to me. You got to be loyal to me. And I'm glad that there was backlash, and I'm glad that he felt the need to try to defend himself. But I think that his defense fell flat. Via Twitter, he wrote, "I'm working very hard to help New York City and state, dealing with both mayor and governor and producing tremendously for them, including 4 new medical centers, 4 new hospitals, fake news that I won't help them because I don't like Cuomo. I do." And then he says, just sent 4,000 ventilators. Well, look, I think it's important to hear from Cuomo to see whether Cuomo feels like he's been helped sufficiently. And as we know, New York has become the epicenter for COVID-19 in the United States. So they desperately do need that help. Let's take a look.
At the rate they are going, it is not happening. FEMA says we're sending 400 ventilators. Really? What am I going to do with 400 ventilators when I need 30,000? You pick the 26,000 people who are going to die because you only sent 400 ventilators.
So it looks like Cuomo isn't pleased with the help that he's received. And by the way, he shouldn't be. Most people in this country shouldn't be. Donald Trump clearly had a very late response to this. He thought it was nothing more than a hoax, didn't take it seriously. And that's part of the reason why we're in the mess that we're in.
Yeah. I mean, Trump's comment was wrong, offensive, everything in multiple different ways. The idea that he's now saying, well, they should have known they would need 10 times the ventilators they have under normal circumstances. They should have known that 2 years ago. You know, they should have done what I did, stuff involving pandemics. Like they should have ordered that when I was, getting rid of the pandemic response team. I was making moves. Why didn't they make moves? Just utter madness. It's a disaster. It's like if Mexico invaded Texas, Texas should have planned for this a couple of years ago. We're not going to do anything about it. We're not going to move in to help them. Like the numbers are, I'm looking at the numbers right now. There are more than 10,000 new cases so far today, more than 140 new deaths just today. He's mentally checked out. He's done with this. It is an imposition on him. Every question from every reporter that implies that there's still a problem going on, he is clearly just done with answering these sorts of things. And it's inconvenient that New York continues to have thousands and thousands of new cases. He doesn't want to deal with that. He's not sending the number of ventilators that he said. The 4 new hospitals they're building, they're setting up stuff in the Javits Center. They're not building 4 new hospitals. And he is just continually so impressed with himself. Every other sentence is the great job that we're doing, how great we're doing. He said more positive things about the job he's doing in that press conference than I've said about myself or my work in literally my entire life. And it never ends. He is so he doesn't have any hands free to deal with the emergency because they're both constantly patting himself on the back.
Definitely. And I'm not surprised that he would make that kind of statement. And I don't doubt for a minute that if it weren't for the backlash that he's receiving right now for that statement, that he would put action behind his words. Because think about how punitive his tax legislation was towards states that are obviously overwhelmingly Democratic, like Democrat voters, right? So New York has a high, tax, state tax, same with California. And the way that legislation was written was specifically meant to punish them tax-wise because of their voters. State taxes used to be tax deductible for federal taxes. Now it's been capped. And so a lot of people are paying way more in taxes in some of the blue states. And I have no doubt that was purposely meant to punish people who don't generally support him. That's the kind of person Donald Trump is. There's no question about it. And of course, in the meantime, he gave corporations, $2 trillion in tax cuts.
Yeah.
So, and then one other thing I just wanted to quickly mention. I wonder about Trump supporters who are loyal to him no matter what, because he went from claiming that COVID-19 is nothing more than a hoax, that it's just like a smear campaign to try to hurt his chances of reelection. And then when he realized that he couldn't do that because this problem wasn't just going to go away, he changed his tune and pretended to start taking it more seriously in like these press briefings and everything. Mm-hmm. What I want to add, and this is a genuine question, I don't know if there are any Trump supporters, Trump loyalists watching this, I'd be shocked. But if you are, how do you trust him? After he clearly lied to the American people, you're included in that group of people who have been lied to, right? So how do you trust him knowing that he changes his messaging depending on what will benefit his political campaign, right? Like, how do you know when he's supposedly telling the truth? It's crazy.
Yeah, and they find a way. They have mental flexibility in that one area and no other area. I just saw a CBS YouGov poll. Who do you trust for coronavirus information? Republicans, 90% said Trump. It was higher than the CDC. They trust him more than they trust the actual doctors who are dealing with this. And they can go back and forth. When he was saying the entire thing is a hoax, they're pretending it's going to be bad just because they want to hurt the economy. Everyone was like, yeah, it's all made up. It's all fake. When he said like a week and a half ago, I'm a wartime president, this is like a war, they said, yes, this is serious, and thank God we have Trump to deal with it. Then this week, it's, oh no, we're going to be wrapped up by Easter. And they're all like, well, why are they all pretending like this is a big issue? We should be moving back to work. It's just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And it doesn't matter. Like, they don't care what he said. But like, when he said, when you have 15 people and the 15 within a couple of days is going to be down to close to zero, that's a pretty good job we've done, he said not too long ago. We've got 66,000 cases in the United States right now, more than 30,000 in New York alone. But he implied, we got like a dozen. It's going to be done in a couple of days. And I have not seen like a single Trump supporter on social media saying, wow, man, I really trusted him in the run up to this thing. And clearly that what he said was not true. I'm going to have to rethink this whole MAGA thing. It doesn't really seem to be getting through to anybody.
It blows my mind. It really does. Well, let's talk about a little bit about what's happening in the primaries, because that's a really important story as well. So Joe Biden has had a difficult time breaking through during the COVID-19 pandemic. At first, he wasn't really saying much. He was in hiding. He was MIA. Then he attempted to do some live streams, which had their own technical difficulties, didn't make him look so great. We did a story about his teleprompter going out at one point and how he really struggled to continue on with any message. And then finally, he's decided, why don't I just turn to what I know, what I'm comfortable with? And that's mainstream media. So he's been doing more and more mainstream media appearances. And I'm understanding why he was MIA, because there were moments like what you're about to watch.
This is Sarah Haynes. In Hot Topics, we talked about Trump saying the government would reassess the recommended period for keeping businesses shut and people at home. Are you at all concerned, as Trump said, that we cannot let the cure be worse than the problem itself?
We have to take care of the cure. That will make the problem worse no matter what.
So I saw that all over Twitter yesterday, and I wanted to see it in its like full context, because I'm like, oh, maybe that could make some sense in its full context. And no, it didn't. Not at all. Clearly he misspoke, but
yeah, I hope. But normally when someone misspeaks, it's that they say one word is incorrect, maybe even the opposite of what they mean. I don't know one word that you can change or even flip that would make that sentence mean something.
Yeah, I don't know what that was. And it seemed like I don't know, he was just like fiddling around, like he wasn't like sitting still. I don't know, maybe he wasn't paying close attention, but there was more, okay? I want to go to this next video, and this is where, needlessly, Biden calls his own statement, which was a totally fine statement, stupid. Take a look.
Why doesn't he just act like a president? That's a stupid way to say it.
You know, Donald Trump was asked
Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, probably best I don't.
It's painful. It's so painful. Like, why? What is happening?
Terrible. It makes me feel. I don't want to say anything that's going to put me in trouble, but it makes me extremely uncomfortable and sad. What are you supposed to say? Like, and you know, everything I just said there, the experience I just had, that was what Nicole Wallace was experiencing in real time in that clip.
Yeah, and what's amazing to me, you know, he did an interview with Jake Tapper, and Jake Tapper like bullied him about how he was coughing into his hand and how he needs to cough into his arm. Like, that was also brutal and uncomfortable to watch. But these are the same people, okay, who were pushing for Biden because he's at least they were implying that he's the most electable, right? That he's got the best chance to beat Donald Trump. And when his campaign kept making that ridiculous argument, they wouldn't question it. They would just go ahead and air it without any challenges. How are you going to argue that he's the best suited to beat Donald Trump? And now there are rumors about how the DNC might attempt to replace Biden with Cuomo. The first time I heard of that was when Cenk mentioned it on the show. And look, I'm pretty critical of Cenk's predictions, as people know, but it actually did like a light bulb did come on, because they've been carrying Cuomo's press conferences like nonstop and really just like talking about Cuomo nonstop. And so I'm worried that like that's really the direction they're going to go in. Because how undemocratic would that be?
I still think I still think the prediction is unlikely, and in particular, saying it to be replaced by one person, I think makes it even more unlikely. But not impossible. I mean, the thing is, it would have to be that Biden would just say, I'm sick or whatever, I'm dropping out, and then they would presumably have to choose someone else. I mean, I would say that in that case, I would probably default to the person who got second most delegates. That seems like the closest thing to democracy in that case. I'm going to predict that that's not the direction that they will go in.
Yeah.
And what if by like a crazy coincidence, a crazy pandemic miracle, the person who had the second most delegates also was the person stepping out and providing leadership coordination and great ideas to make sure that we get through this thing, that we protect the communities that are most vulnerable, and in fact set up a system whereby we will be protected against future calamities like this? What if we had that all wrapped up in one person? How could you turn it down?
Well, we do, and he will be turned down because they don't like him. They just don't like him. Instead, we're going to get this, which is the next video of Joe Biden bungling an interview. I believe this one was also on MSNBC.
I just can't figure the guy. It's like, I don't know, it's like watching a yo-yo. I shouldn't have said it that way. It's like watching.
It feels that way. I want to That's okay. I want to ask you.
Oh
no! Don't.
I don't want to see him on a debate stage against Trump. I just don't. Like,
twice
because
he
Trump
said I
is a
should have
disgusting giant bully, and you know how he is. You just know. And by the way, like, I know people who defend Biden will then say things like, "Well, clearly Trump has issues of his own. He says oranges instead of origins." I get it. I get it. But Trump is able to bully his way out of everything. And Biden's not a bully. To his credit, he is, I think, politics aside, I think Biden is genuinely a kind person, right? Like, he doesn't have that bully in him. And on top of that, what you see in these interviews doesn't inspire confidence. And so seeing him up against a bully, like, if he said that statement on the debate stage, like, "Oh, I shouldn't have said that." I mean, Trump is like salivating at a chance to respond to something like that.
And he said it twice in that section. You got to stop with whatever that is, and then the looking down like you're about to be punished or something. I don't know what that is. I don't want to see it on anyone. I certainly don't want to see it on someone who's at least implying that they want to be president. I hate the whole thing. I think it's really, really weird that people backing him aren't acknowledging any of this, that they're pretending that people bringing it up are being completely unfair. Look, I understand that there are people who, like, their thing is to try to find things like this. Like, that's what they like because they know that it's a crowd pleaser. And then if it's not there, they'll just make up something. I get that there are people like that. I'm not like that. I, in fact, get attacked for not doing that sort of content. But even I think I'm a reasonable person, and I can watch these appearances and just wonder what possible reasonable explanation there is for the things that we're seeing. And it's a warning, because there's going to be a lot of regular voters that are also going to be watching these things once they start to pay attention to this general election, if we get to that. And they, too, are going to wonder what the hell is going on. And I don't see any plausible argument coming to explain things.
And one thing to keep in mind as we, deal with COVID-19 and think about this upcoming election, Trump's doing well in some of his approval ratings. So Gallup did yet another poll, and it was released this week, finds that 60% of Americans approve of Donald Trump's response to COVID-19.
That is sheer madness.
It is sheer madness. But that's what we're up against. Obviously, he's a liar. Obviously, he's really bungled the response to COVID-19 by first responding to it by saying it's a hoax. But it doesn't matter. It's like, we have to think about optics. I don't think I personally do that enough. I always get into like the policy proposals, and no, you got to think of what average Americans are seeing, right? And they see these press conferences with Trump and they think, no, he's taking care of it. He's taking care of it. So the approval, even among Democrats, has gone up, specifically in how he's responded to COVID-19. So something to keep in mind as we move forward, because I just don't think, based on what we've seen from Biden, he's got the best shot in beating Trump. And that's scary to me. All right, we got to take a break. When we come back, we'll talk about whether Donald Trump is actually going to open the economy back up by Easter Sunday. And we'll discuss some more news. We'll be right back.
Are you a politician with a ridiculous point to make? Are you in need of a petulant, outdated way to make it? Then you'll need one of my signs. Hi, I'm Simon Simonson of Simonson Signs. We'll take the stupid, over-the-top, meaningless allegory you have and put it on foam core. So maybe someone will notice your grandstanding. Because this is C-SPAN, and anything that's not people milling around in front of a running vote count is almost considered moderately entertaining. The bar is low, just like our prices. We've got plenty of designs. We also brought you Mike Lee's Tauntauns. They're tons of fun. What does this have to do with the Green New Deal? About as much as this other visual aid he used of Reagan on a T-Rex. Or is that a Velociraptor? Who cares? Who the cares? No one gives a. Call us now at Simonson Signs. We'll make your stupid point stupidly for money today.
Viewers had asked for an interview with the TYT Lizard. Mr. Lizard. Oh, you changed colors today. Nice. I don't even know how you feel about us. Do you even like us?
Well, you guys made me this awesome house, so I'm kind of in your debt. I was found outside on the street, and you gave me a home. Granted, it was a really crappy home for a while, but then through the power of fundraising, I became a person who has a multi-level Trump-style mansion.
You do. By the way, you've never looked better, man. Normally, you're just green or just brown, but today you're in mid-lizard, right?
I'm not very smart. I'm a lizard, so I don't know how the science works. I guess this is just my mood. It's not every day that thresholds like this are broken. I'm just so excited. I can't contain my pigmentation.
And now you're showing it off.
Yep.
Yeah, I've never seen the lizard like this before.
When you choose Aspiration, you can also trust that your hard-earned money is deposited into a financial firm with a conscience. You're sending a message for change and saving yourself more than just a couple bucks along the way. With the Aspiration Spend and Save account, you'll actually pay no monthly fees. Aspiration also commits to donating 10% of every dollar of its earnings to charitable microloans for low-income Americans. And as a thank you, when you sign up with Aspiration, we'll give you a free month of TYT membership. Head to aspiration.com/TYT.
That 300 million is a pretty good number, we were doing a press release on it, and I got all worked up. And I said, okay, well, that's the size of the U.S. population. You know what our next target is? The size of the entire world on the road to 6 billion. Although by the time we hit it, it'll probably be 7, maybe 8 billion.
Not a big deal. A couple of days ago on the TYT network, we passed 1 billion views.
What the hell?
What the hell?
That's a big freaking deal.
2 billion views.
What now?
Sorry.
What did we do? 2 billion?
2 billion.
They said it couldn't be done, but it was done.
We just crossed 5 billion views on YouTube.
I mean, imagine 10 years ago thinking, one day.
We looked at you like, are you nuts? Young Turks crosses 6 billion views.
Young Turks has just passed another milestone, 10 billion views.
Damn.
When you sign up for NordVPN, you'll take control of your internet experience while helping support us here at TYT. NordVPN allows up to 6 connections at once and no data limits, so you can get all the content you want on any device. For a limited time, go to nordvpn.com/TYT or use the coupon TYT to get a 3-year plan for 70% off plus 1 extra month free.
Welcome back to the Young Turks. Hey guys. I want to give a quick shout out to Brett Ehrlich. For those of you who are wondering, like, how are you guys doing this? You're in different locations. Brett Ehrlich is like taking care, like he's directing the show right now from a remote location called his home. So he's amazing.
like 5 days ago, Joe Biden's campaign desperately needed Brett Ehrlich to get them set up.
They still need Brett Ehrlich, but they can't have him. They can't poach him from us.
And for different reasons, possibly.
Yes. All right. Well, let's get right to the next story. There's been a lot of discussion about Donald Trump possibly loosening federal guidelines pertaining to COVID-19 in order to open the economy back up and get people back to work. That would be fine if it didn't actually risk people's lives and continue to spread COVID-19 to the point where our healthcare system is completely overwhelmed. And so recently he was asked about it by reporters during a press briefing. And I just want you to pay attention to his wording, and then we're going to give you Anthony Fauci, who has to keep cleaning up Trump's messes. Let's take a look at the first video.
On everything we're doing.
Who suggested
I just thought it was a beautiful time. It'd be a beautiful time, a beautiful timeline.
So that was
It's a
based
great
on
day.
any of the data?
It was based on a certain level of weeks from the time we started.
So he chose Easter Sunday because he thinks it's a beautiful time to get people killed by contracting a virus that's incredibly aggressive for the respiratory system. Like, what? He just never says anything of substance, ever. He always says, like, he recycles the same sentences. It was a beautiful this. It's a beautiful that, right? Or tremendous this, tremendous that. Like, at what point are people going to demand substance from this buffoon?
Never. I guess they like what they're getting. It's a beautiful time. It's a beautiful timeline. No, every other timeline more beautiful than the one we're currently living in because of what we've been stuck with. There are times, I mean, it's not infrequent under Trump where I wish I could just let loose a primal roar that would reduce mountains to ash and would kill everyone so they wouldn't have to experience this anymore. That, like, he should have said that. So the question is, you're going to tell people to go back to the normal routine when we are still on the cusp of the peak need for respirators, all of this stuff. We're talking about potentially millions of people dying. And his response is, it's a beautiful time. It's a beautiful timeline. That should be when people come in and they cart him away and they put him in a padded room because he is not responsible enough to be responsible for himself, let alone for the federal government and the response to a pandemic. We are on the cusp of potentially the worst disaster to face our country in more than our lifetimes. And he thinks Easter would be great. It'd be fun. Who cares? Let's pack people in churches, he said, which seems like the sort of thing you'd say if your plan was to kill as many Christians as possible. That plan would be indistinguishable from what Donald Trump is pursuing right now.
The only thing that matters is making money in the stock market. Really, that's all it is. Like, money, profits over actual human lives. That's what's driving him right now. Luckily, there was a follow-up by a different reporter. So let's take a look at how he handled it and how Trump responded.
The number of known coronavirus cases in the country double in just 2 days. Another 95 people have died just in the last 24 hours. New York's governor is saying this is spreading like a bullet train across the country, and the governor of Louisiana is saying that his state may not be able to handle the cases that they're facing by early April. So, what are you seeing in all of this that leads you to think that we could reopen by Easter or even earlier?
Sure, we're working with all of them. We can be talking about large sections of our country because there are sections of our country that you didn't talk about that are doing unbelievably well. They have very little incidence or problem, very small numbers. It's very possible that they won't be ever subject to what's happening in New York. New York is definitely a hot spot. There's no question about it. And you know what we're doing in New York to try and help. And I think we're doing an incredible job. We're going to have the hospitals up quickly, the medical centers also quickly. But we'll just have to see. We have to follow it. We have to see. We're going to look at that curve. We're going to see when it starts coming down.
Prison.
New York.
In the words of Anna Kasparian, prison.
Yeah. New York is not an island, okay? And even if it were, as we know, this virus has traveled from country to country. So massive bodies of water, big water, from the standpoint of water, didn't stop this virus from spreading to the United States. Yeah. What were the chances? What were the chances that we would have a massive pandemic when that guy's in charge? What were the chances? It's like the most unlucky situation ever.
Higher than if he weren't in charge right now because of the impact he's had on it. But yeah, I mean, like I look constantly at the case numbers, and it's like Michigan's got 500 additional cases today, Massachusetts 679 new cases. These are new cases, by the way, not total cases. And Connecticut, my home state's got 257 additional, and 7 people died from it just so far today since the last time I loaded it. And on Easter, those numbers are going to be larger for a 24-hour period than they are today. They're going to continue to increase, and he doesn't care because he's not listening to the doctors, because he doesn't care what they have to say. He cares about his approval rating. He cares about his fortune and the fortunes of his friends in the 1%, and that's it. And you're not going to stop him with your references to Dr. Fauci, or, you know, the fact that, let's say he wasn't lying about, you know, how soon the hospital ship is going to be at New York, or how when they're going to have these new hospitals set up in the Javits Center. Even if all of that was true, it is not going to be nearly enough for the demand that they're going to have in just a couple of weeks. And we attacked him for wasting months. He's wasting today. He's going to waste tomorrow. He is just wasting when he could be buying this equipment, when he could be shipping it around. The government could be coordinating the response. They could be coordinating the logistics to make sure that every hospital gets what it needs. And all of this is relying on him saying there's huge sections of the country that aren't doing that bad. How many tests do you think they're running in large sections of the country right now? The limited tests that we have are being sent to some of the worst urban areas, but it is spreading unchecked in large parts of this country. We have no actual idea how many people have it in New York, let alone Idaho or Utah or Missouri or wherever. And all of this, he doesn't care. How can he be in charge in a situation like this?
I know, John, but Easter is a beautiful time. Beautiful time.
It is. Like he cares about Easter, by the way.
Couldn't care less. But Anthony Fauci, again, he's the adult in the room, and he's doing his best to persuade Trump not to go through with loosening the guidelines. And following Trump's statements, here's what he had to say.
Where do things stand right now between you and the president on the timeline and where we are?
You know, it's a back and forth. The president clearly listens. I mean, he has this aspirational goal of hoping that we might be able to do it by a certain date. We talked to him about that. We say we need to be flexible. He realizes that, and he accepts that.
He realizes that, and he accepts that.
Sure.
Until, you know, his buddies bring up, this is not good for our businesses, until he realizes it's not good for his businesses. And by the way, when I say it's not good for his businesses, it's in his mind, right? Because these federal guidelines encourage people to stay home, which means that his properties aren't receiving the same patronage that he would hope for. But if he loosens those guidelines and this pandemic continues, in the long run, not even in the long run, in like the mid run, it's going to hurt him tremendously. It's going to hurt the economy even more, and we're going to lose lives as a result.
Yeah. Yeah. And the issue is that he's not actually listening to Fauci. He's definitely not listening to us. Like, if you're watching this and you might agree with what we're saying, when this is done, after the post game, you should check in on Fox News and see what Tucker Carlson and Sean Hannity and Laura Ingraham are saying, because that's who Donald Trump is actually listening to. And Fox News is all aboard the let's get this economy restarted thing. Doesn't matter if every grandma and grandpa in the country dies. They've signed on to that, and he is going to be listening to them. He's going to be watching the shows. He's going to be receiving their phone calls. That's who he trusts, not the CDC or health professionals, but pundits on Fox News.
Well, he doesn't even listen to the majority of Americans because recent polling indicates that 74% of voters support a national quarantine, limiting activity except essential trips such as to the grocery store and to the pharmacy. He doesn't care about any of them. He doesn't care about any of us. It's not about keeping us safe. Again, this is about profits over human lives, profits over people. And it's frustrating, but this is the person we have in charge, the unluckiest situation ever. All right, the postgame show is next. Make sure you check it out. Become a member. Go to tyt.com/join. We'll see you soon. Welcome to the members only post-game show. Hey.
Oh, we got to get the soundboard on Brett's computer to give him another thing to do.
Oh, he'd love that, I'm sure. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of multitasking going on, so it's admirable to say the least. I don't know how he's managing all of this, but he's doing a good job. So I've been eating a lot of Easy Mac.
Yeah.
Don't judge. Like, I love Easy Mac, and now I have an excuse for it, you know?
Mhm.
Like, it's one of those things where I would feel guilty when I'd buy it at supermarkets, and it's just a guilty pleasure. And now I'm like, but I have to. It's a non-perishable item that I need for this quarantine.
Yeah, it's a great idea. I got some. I forgot that I had it, and now I'm looking forward to it. That's like what I'm.
So
that's,
good.
That's my night.
So good. All right. Well, let's do some stories because we have some fun ones. But before we get to the fun ones, there is a serious one. It's an ongoing theme among the terrible people in this country. And it's about encouraging people to like literally risk their lives just so the economy is back up and running. And it's just such a short-sighted, stupid thing to encourage. So recently, we shared a story regarding the lieutenant governor of Texas, Dan Patrick, who was trying to encourage Americans to go back to work. He was essentially arguing that, like, people really want to do this for the country. They want older people, older Americans, they want to go to work. They want to risk their lives. And unsurprisingly, there are people who are defending this type of irresponsible discourse, okay? Now, before we get to the people defending him, I just want to remind the viewers of what Dan Patrick said exactly. Take a look.
Are you willing to take a chance on your survival in exchange for keeping the America that all America loves for your children and grandchildren? And if that's the exchange, I'm all in. And that doesn't make me noble or brave or anything like that. But don't sacrifice the country. Don't do that. Don't ruin this great American dream.
You're basically saying that this disease could take your life, but that's not the scariest thing to you. There's something that would be worse than dying.
Yeah.
It gets worse. It actually gets worse every time I watch it. It's disgusting. God, he's such trash. Because it's not about saving the country that Americans love. Americans don't love the corporate greed that Dan Patrick is trying to defend, really. And there's a growing chorus of people who are saying like, no, young and healthy people should stay home because like they're the future. But like older Americans, yeah, you're more vulnerable to like dying as a result of contracting this virus. But you should go to work to save the country that we supposedly all love / my stock portfolio.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, again, we've talked about it a million times, is counterproductive. It's not actually going to save the economy.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say. We have to make sure that people understand that this is not a choice that we're making between saving people and saving the economy. They want to pitch it that way because they think some people will eventually think, well, yeah, guess we got to save the economy. It will not do that either. The economy will still be devastated. Millions of people dying tends to do that. But in addition, far more people will die than is necessary. I just also want to point out really fast, when you say, I'm not saying I'm brave, you 100% aren't.
Are you willing to
it,
take a chance on your survival in exchange for keeping the America that all America loves for your children and grandchildren?
What scares you most.
And if that's the exchange, I'm all in.
As well. It's a very brave move to send other people to die of a disease.
Yeah. Okay. So just real quick on Tucker Carlson. Every once in a while, he says something that seems to be pro-working class, as if he really cares about the average American worker and is looking for protections. And I never fall for that BS. Tucker Carlson is not an honest person. He does not care about average Americans. He does not care about the disenfranchised. Tucker Carlson is exactly who he has shown us he is. And he's just not a good person and does not care about us. So you're right in that, he totally whitewashes what Dan Patrick was saying there. He helps Dan Patrick by just providing a platform for that disgusting rhetoric. And then after there's some backlash, he'll host another guest who will say the same thing while simultaneously defending Dan Patrick, and that person is Brit Hume. So let's take a look at that video.
What we're living in now, this circumstance as we try to beat this virus, is not sustainable. That the utter collapse of the country's economy, which many think will happen if this goes on much longer, is an intolerable result. And that he is saying, for his own part, that he'd be willing to take a risk. We live with the risk of seasonal influenza every year, and thousands upon thousands die from it. But we do not, as has been pointed out, shut down the economy to combat it. We don't shut down the economy to save every single life that's threatened by a widespread disease. We just don't.
If things play out the way that they're hoping, there could be more than 1 million Americans who lose their lives as a result of this virus. Right. So if they do loosen the federal guidelines and everyone goes back to work and pretends like this isn't a big deal, millions of Americans will die. But is it really worth it to shut down the economy, John? Really? Is it really worth it?
Yeah, they have a very weird view of what the economy is and why we have an economy. I would say that if it requires the periodic sacrifice of millions of Americans, then I don't think we should save it. Maybe we set up something else in its place, that a system perhaps that values the lives of the workers, that fuel the economy. That they think about it in this very abstract, almost like religious sense, its importance, and how its importance transcends the importance of everyone who contributes to it. I'm hoping that it's not effective. I worry that a lot of Fox viewers are coming to accept what all these people in the media that they trust the most are telling them hour after hour. They transition so smoothly from this thing is a hoax that doesn't matter to you should be willing to die to continue the economy. I just worry that they're going to accept it.
Yeah, well, you're absolutely right in being worried. And once they do accept it, and many of them suffer the consequences of doing what they're encouraged to do, you'll have people like Ben Shapiro on Twitter arguing that it's stupid to blame Fox or stupid to blame Donald Trump for the decisions that these individuals have made. So, and I'm referencing Ben Shapiro specifically because he's one of the idiots on Twitter who was outraged that people were blaming Trump for the man in Arizona dying after he took, that chemical that Trump was talking about during one of the press conferences. The wife, who luckily survived, they both took the chemical, right? The wife luckily said clearly, yeah, we took it because Trump was talking about it during these press conferences. And we were worried about coronavirus, so we just took matters into our own hands.
Yeah.
So how is it stupid to blame Donald Trump? I don't get it. I think it's stupid to not blame Donald Trump for that.
Yeah. Yeah, look, people are going to panic, but he was obviously and purposefully falsely hyping up that drug. And all he says this drug combined with this drug is totally going to cure it. It's going to be ready really soon. Don't worry. I have a lot of faith in it. And then then he goes away. Lots of his followers stop paying attention. And then doctors say, no, we're talking about we need 18 months of testing on people. We don't know if it does anything. And even if it does do stuff, it might have horrible side effects that might be worse than the thing it's trying to deal with. But they don't hear that. They're not paying attention. They hear they're terrified now, and they hear, hey, here's a potential solution. And maybe they can't get it in its medicinal form, but there's some derivative of it that's used in aquariums or something. So people start taking that, because they are scared, and he is playing on that to try to temporarily.
He's the president. What if the president isn't responsible for what he says? Then none of us should ever be responsible for anything we ever say. He's the president. He's the most influential person in the country, if not the world. How dumb is it to defend Donald Trump in this instance? It's just gross. All right. So one final video I want to show you related to this whole theme of getting people back to work when it's unsafe to do so. Glenn Beck tried to make himself out to be a hero, even though his job doesn't require him to have any human interaction. He does it from a bunker. You're about to watch it right now. Take a look at what he had to say.
I want to have a frank conversation with you and ask you where you stand. I'm in the danger zone. I'm right at the edge. I'm 56. In Italy, they're saying if you're sick and you're 60, don't even come in. So I'm in the danger zone. I would rather have my children stay home and all of us who are over 50 go in and keep this economy going and working. Even if we all get sick, I'd rather die than kill the country, because it's not the economy that's dying, it's the country.
What is that supposed to mean?
I don't know, but I'm glad that he realizes how giant his head is. So he gave himself ample headroom in that shot.
Why was it so zoomed out?
It was ridiculous.
I don't understand that.
Because he's an incompetent idiot. Which I get. Yes, that was repetitive. I know, right?
Why would you do that?
I'm a real courageous American, okay?
Yeah.
I would rather. I'm in the danger zone.
I'm in the danger. Okay, so I would like to just like grab him by the shoulders and say, okay, if let's say hypothetically he's accurately quoting someone from the Italian government saying that if you're 60 and you're sick, don't even come in because you're in the danger zone. Okay, first of all, don't call up danger zone. That's for Archer. It's not for the Blaze. But anyway, why should you not come in? Because hypothetically we can't save people who are 60 plus? No, we can. They can't because their hospitals are many times over overflowing. And there's a lesson there. That's what we're trying to avoid. We're trying to stop a situation where in a very short period of time, so many people become infected with coronavirus that our health system can't help get people through it. The 20% of cases that are severe, where people might end up on ventilators and they need to literally be kept alive while their body fights it off. We can't have too many of those people in a short period of time. The solution to that is social distancing, self-quarantining. And he doesn't get that. He thinks, it's bad there. I guess we might as well just give up. And who cares if people die needlessly that could otherwise live? And you mentioned the Ben Shapiro. How many days into the national lockdown are we in? There is no national lockdown. There's no guidance from the federal government insisting that it happens. So some states are doing the right thing. Some have been doing it for a week or even for 2, but a lot aren't at all. And far more people are going to become sick as a result of that. Like we're trying to fight day after day in our shows to make sure that he doesn't tell the states to call off the lockdowns they have. We haven't even got to the point where we need to be in terms of social distancing.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I want to clarify. Yes, like they haven't actually done a lockdown. They have suggested guidelines, right? Mm-hmm. But they're not really enforced. And it's scary. It's scary that we're going through this with Trump in charge. It really is. And with these people in the media who aren't even competent enough to get like a decent shot for their underground bunker show, but yet feel the need to share their expert political analysis on what we should do in the middle of a pandemic.
All right. But really super fast. Mm-hmm. I just love that like this week's narrative for all these people who universally call themselves pro-life is millions of grandmas and grandpas gotta die. Come on, I gotta make me some bank. That's the pro-life move.
No, it's amazing. Texas, which by the way, Dan Patrick is the lieutenant governor of Texas. They have stopped allowing abortion clinics to perform abortions unless the woman's life is in danger, right? So they have exploited this terrible crisis for their own weird religious political objectives. At the same time, their argument is, well, we're just trying to save baby lives, right? When in reality, no, they're not. I mean, they're encouraging people to go back to work when they shouldn't be back to work. They don't care about lives. It's crazy. Anyway, we got to move on to something like less devastating.
Okay.
All right. So, we're going to talk about Britney Spears. Britney Spears doesn't get much coverage on the Young Turks. However, recently on social media, she posted something that I think deserves a little bit of analysis, a little bit of attention. This is on Instagram. She posted the following. During this time of isolation, we need connection now more than ever. Call your loved ones. Write virtual love letters. Technologies like virtual communication, streaming, and broadcasting are part of our community collaboration. We will learn to kiss and hold each other through the waves of the web. We will feed each other, redistribute wealth, strike. We will understand our own importance from the places we must stay. Communion moves beyond walls. We can still be together. Okay, so that was her statement. And if you notice in one of the comments, so she commented on her post and she included the red roses, which is a symbol of people who are supportive of socialism. So that's where she's coming from. If anyone had any, suspicion, well, that confirms your suspicions. That's what she's referring to.
100%. But by the way, can I point out what I noticed? Can we bring that graphic back up of the thing? So when your graphics person screen capped that, one of the comments underneath is by Slutty Puffin. When I screen capped it this morning for the damage report, we had to blur out Wet Dildo who responded to it. What is up with Instagram usernames? But anyway, yeah, I like the message. It's like 80% DSA, 20% Marianne Williamson. Like that's
totally
like the thread that's going through the democratic socialism there.
Definitely. So the DSA did post about it. So I wanted to share that with you. They wrote, "It's Britney comrade," making a reference to "It's Britney bitch," which is a common phrase that's associated with Britney Spears. And of course, some of the critics went after her because she has money, right? So they're like making fun of that statement, considering the opulence she lives in. But I think that's a common misconception about what socialists want. They're not saying like, we want everyone to live in poverty. No, we want people to live good lives, but there are certain things that shouldn't have a profit motive, like healthcare, right? So it's just an easy, like, an honestly stupid way of trying to dismantle a very robust argument for how we can have a better system in place so people aren't like dying due to corporate greed.
Yeah, it's a dodge. That's all it is.
Yeah.
And I'm glad to see, Britney Spears, taking up the rose flag. I'm watching to see what Christina Aguilera does soon. Maybe she's ready to go. I don't know. Cardi B has been doing some great videos recently about access to testing and treatment for coronavirus. Maybe the musicians at the end of the day do need to lead on this.
Well, and Fran Drescher had a great tweet that I want to share with you. So she was actually responding to someone on Twitter. So I want to give you the original tweet that she responded to. It was from Simon Says 89. Of course, wealthy owners of capital want labor to return to work, during the coronavirus. The wealthy have access to testing and treatment. The wealthy won't be left with massive medical debt if they get sick. Labor is being treated as the sacrificial lamb. And so then Fran Drescher, TV's favorite nanny, responded back by saying, I agree. Capitalism has become another word for ruling class elite. When profit is at the expense of all things of true value, we got a problem.
Yeah.
I love it.
And I would reply, we got a problem.
Definitely.
We do.
We definitely do. So some people minimize like the impact of celebrities when it comes to political issues like these, but I think that they are influential. And I think it's important to hear from, people who aren't scared to talk about the flaws in capitalism. I think there are a lot of people who are like worried about being labeled like scary communists or whatever it is. But we clearly have major flaws in our system, and people are losing their lives, their livelihoods as a result of that. So I love seeing people with giant platforms, raising awareness on that.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, we shouldn't, deify them, and celebrities are not the solution to all of our problems. They're not heroes. But if they can be allies, then yeah, that's better than having them against us, which a lot of them are, whether they're outwardly against us or not. Yeah, let's have some on our side.
By the way, don't let me forget. We're going to do one more story, but after that, I want to talk about Tiger King. Okay? Don't let me forget. It's a show on Netflix. Okay.
I know.
So one more story. Okay. All right. So there's this viral video featuring mayors in Italy calling people out who aren't taking the social distancing seriously enough. Okay? So if you are listening to the podcast version of this show, try to get a hold of the video version. There are subtitles. Okay. Brett's very excited about this story. So, so if you're listening to the podcast version of this show, there are subtitles. So see if you can watch this video. If not, I'll go ahead and tell you what they're saying, but it's just incredible. Take a look.
Di parrucchiere che vanno in casa a aggiustare i capelli e le femmine. A che cazzo servono? Cioè, ma l'avete capito che utavu chiudono? L'avete capito che chi c***o sta da vedere per sti capelli aggiustati in utavu?
Okay, so this is what he's saying. It's just so funny. These effing hairdressers who keep going to people's homes to make their hair all nice. What the F is that? Who the hell's going to see your hair once you're in a coffin? Keeping it 100.
Yeah, and the ping pong and everything. And like, I've taken, my wife and I, we've taken a couple of bike rides so that we don't literally lose our minds. And we stay away from people, but we see people like congregating and walking past each other casually. I went to the grocery store and I was keeping my distance, my distance.
Oh, your business, okay.
I was keeping my distance and minding my own business, so it's business. But lots of people were just walking right by each other and like super casual, like. And that is always going to be the case. Not everyone is going to take it seriously, and not everyone is going to take it sufficiently seriously. But that is all the more reason why we have to, those of us who can, we have to do the right thing. We have to keep the numbers low. And maybe our mayor's got to start making some videos like that. Maybe Eric Garcetti's got to walk through the streets cursing at people.
I'd be shocked if he did that.
I would.
Let's watch one more video since you referenced it, the one about the ping pong.
Non potete giocare a ping pong, andiamo. Alla PlayStation, andate a giocare alla PlayStation a casa, non si può stare qua, andiamo, non potete stare qui a casa.
So he goes up to people playing ping pong, like they have a ping pong table set up and everything, and he's like, you can't play ping pong, go home and play PlayStation, like video games, he said. But yeah.
I'm assuming that's like a Xerox or a Coke sort of thing where like that brand name has become the stand-in for it. But it does bother me that like in the past when I would go up to people playing sports and tell them to play video games instead, I was pitched as some sort of weirdo, but now mayors get to do it and they're cool.
Well, the circumstances have changed, John.
That's
but like,
true.
yeah, I feel like maybe you really are thriving in this stay-at-home environment.
I think that, yeah, probably weathering it a little bit better, a little bit easier than some other people.
Mm-hmm. And I agree with you about going outside, keeping your distance from people, but just, I go on an evening walk with Christian every night now, just cause like you need to get some space, some fresh air, and it helps.
Yeah. Don't go close to people and don't touch anything. But other than that, you can walk around, you can ride a bike, you can walk your dog. I'm assuming Charlie is helping out, immeasurably during all this.
Yes. Except every time I had tech issues, I would like have a meltdown. Like I'd start yelling at my computer and I'd be frustrated. And Charlie's like very sensitive to my mood. So if I'm like feeling distressed, if I look at him, like he's shaking and it's like terrible. So like he really cares. It's crazy to say this, but like my dog really does seem to care about like how we're feeling. And if we're distressed, he gets distressed.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see that.
Yeah. So that's the dogs. What about cats? I hear there's some big cats online.
Yes. Let's talk about big cats. So look, I'm not a big binge watcher. I don't binge watch anything. But I decided to give this show on Netflix a shot. Okay. It's a docuseries. It's called Tiger King. And I'm I at least 3 episodes every night. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't even know how many episodes there are. Every time I think like this has got to be the last episode, there's a new one and the story just gets crazier and crazier. And I'm not going to do any spoilers. Okay. So for those of you who haven't watched it, no spoilers. But you haven't seen it, John?
No, I didn't know it was the sort of show that could have spoilers. I thought it was about like rich people who own tigers or something.
Some of them, I guess, are rich. It's not about one person. It's about several people who have like these private zoos for exotic animals, which, by the way, should 100% be banned. And also like it's been, okay, so there's two ways to describe this docuseries. On one hand, it's trashy as hell. Okay, like let's not lie to ourselves. It's a trashy show. There's all sorts of trashy things that happen. Lots of trashy things, like unbelievable trashy things that happen in this docuseries. However, it's also super enlightening because you get confronted by some of the arguments you hear from people who have like animal sanctuaries, or they have private zoos and they'll argue that they're doing it for conservation, that kind of stuff. And it makes you really question that argument. I highly recommend it. It's entertaining, and yes, there's like parts that make you feel guilty for watching it because of how trashy it gets at times, but it's amazing. Like, it's just an amazing docuseries.
All right, cool. I've seen it pop up on Netflix. We're currently watching House, and we're only on season 2, so we got a ways to go. But I will definitely add that to the queue.
Haven't you already watched House?
Mm-hmm. Twice.
Okay.
Twice all the way through over the years. This is the third time, and I'm very glad to be doing it.
Nice. Okay, so you're watching House. Real quick before we go, 2 minutes or so. What are your ways of coping with this, social distancing stuff?
I mean, we have been, Arlene and I we take the dogs for walks, we go on bike rides, we go to the park and like throw the ball for the dogs. So we make sure that we get outside every day at least, and on the weekend even more. Like we rode like all over the place. So that's really important. Other than that, like we're playing games and we're watching shows, like the sort of stuff that we would do normally, really. That for me is the ideal life anyway. So if we can maintain that during the pandemic, then things aren't quite so bad.
Yeah, I hear
What about
you. No, the outdoor stuff is really key. And I don't like bike riding. I'm not a huge bike riding fan, mostly because in LA, it's hard to ride your bike without feeling like you're risking your life.
Yeah.
So, but there's a park nearby that has a bike path. And so just this past weekend, we went around the bike path twice. It's like about 5 miles long. And it was lovely. Like it was a great experience. And one thing that I do like seeing is a lot more people are getting physically active because they're so bored at home. So I see a lot more people out there going for a jog or, riding their bikes, maybe even some roller skating. Like I'm seeing all sorts of stuff that's like really good.
Yeah, but you have to choose carefully though, because those the big hill with the stairs in Culver City.
Yeah,
like we looked at it and there were a bunch of people going up and down it, and the thing is, it's like this narrow, like you can't see because I'm on a frame. But yeah, you're too close. If you're going up and someone's coming down and they're breathing heavy and everything, that's not a good idea with coronavirus out there.
Yeah, I find myself like I don't think this does anything. It's just like it makes me feel better, I guess. But like, let's say I'm going for a walk or something and someone's getting close. I like hold my breath until I pass them as if that's going to do anything. It's so ridiculous.
I think everybody does.
Yeah.
I don't know if it does anything, but it can't hurt.
Yeah. The most important thing is don't touch your face because
don't touch their face. That's more important.
That too. Yes. Yeah. All right. Thank you, John. You're the best. Thank you for doing the show today. And I hope everyone enjoyed the program. Special thanks to Brett again for controlling everything and making sure this airs on time every day. And yeah, that's it. We'll see you guys tomorrow.
See you soon.